I haven't heard something so narcissistic since I heard that Michael Jackson moonwalked on top of his car during his own child molestation trial. Hey everyone, I'm here with a weekend update for you all. Just a friendly reminder that Ben Shapiro wants you and your family members to die of coronavirus because it supports his neoliberal ideology. Ben Shapiro can't wait for the economy to reopen because it's the only thing he cares about. So when the American economy requires a blood sacrifice, Ben Shapiro's first in line. Not to sacrifice any of his own blood, though, he's the first in line to push the American working class onto that altar. Ben Shapiro would happily sacrifice the lives of millions of workers if it can help resurrect the economy. Of course, Ben Shapiro has nothing to worry about. His job is to do an internet podcast, which he can do from his house. He's not going to catch the coronavirus.
A lot more difficult when you actually have to go back to work to go out there and feed your family and support your family.
You hear that, everyone? If we don't restart this economy right now, we're all going to starve to death. If you're one of these workers who's out of work because the economy is shut down, you have no way of feeding yourself. There's no federal government program that allows you to apply for welfare benefits that can be used directly for the purpose of paying for food. So the American worker is just going to starve. But wait a minute, I've got some breaking news. In the last 25 minutes, Tim Poole has released 17 YouTube videos. And in several of them, he makes a brilliant observation. You can't eat dollar bills, people. We gotta restart the economy. I guess we're just supposed to ignore the fact that despite being incredibly wealthy, Tim Poole is so terrified of the coronavirus, he's been living in a van. Well, just like the Civil War never happened, America isn't gonna run out of food. You know why? The economy isn't completely shut down, you morons. Have you not heard of this concept of essential worker? The people who are farming are still farming. You can go to the grocery store, it's still open. And guess what? They're full of food.
Now, you may have noticed the economy is a trash heap right now. And you may have also noticed that the government is spending oodles and oodles and oodles of dollars, which means that now would not be a bad time to get into the precious metals market. And the fact is the stock market's going to be up, it's going to be down. But one thing you know is that the government is never going to pay off this debt, which means that having diversified into precious metals probably a pretty smart idea. Would have been smart to do that months ago. Still smart to do it now. You should go talk to my friends over at Birch Gold if you're interested in at least putting...
Am I just imagining this? Is this a real thing? Did I honestly just hear Ben Shapiro shill Jew gold on his own podcast?
I want your Jew gold. Okay, fine. Here. Now let's go.
Which means that the case fatality rate of this thing is, again, way lower than we have been led to believe. It is probably, in my opinion, somewhere between 0.2 and 0.6%. It is not 3%. It is not 4%. It is not 13% or 11%. Right now in New York City, if you just look at the number of deaths over the number of diagnosed cases, you're looking at something like 10% or 11%.
Ben Shapiro has literally no idea what he's talking about. I say that because I just did exactly what he said. I went to New York State's website and I compared number of confirmed cases to number of fatalities. And guess what? It's around 6%, not 0.2%, not 10%, 6%. Now, what if it's true that some studies showed that a lot more people have been infected? That the fatality rate for coronavirus is much lower because we're not including all of these people who were afflicted with the disease but never even realized it. On the one hand, yes, that would be a good thing because it'd be a lower rate of death. But on the other hand, it would mean the disease was much more infectious. Look, here's what it comes down to. We all saw what happened in New York City. The hospitals were overwhelmed. Tens of thousands of people died. Do we want what happened in New York to be repeated anywhere else in the country? Absolutely not. It doesn't matter how many studies they do, how many extra people were infected. The fact of the matter is, we cannot have New York City repeat itself all over the country. Don't let shills like Ben Shapiro try and convince you otherwise.
Alone, that usually when somebody has hypertension, that person also has a second condition. And the second condition is really the one that's a problem, not the hypertension. So obesity is a condition that is that has great overlap with hypertension. Diabetes has great overlap with hypertension. 42% of coronavirus patients who had body mass index data on file suffered from obesity. 32% of all patients suffered from diabetes.
Are you fat? Do you have the diabetes? Well, if so, then it's your own damn fault if you die during coronavirus. Ben Shapiro needs this economy reopened ASAP. So you better find a way to shed those pounds pretty fast. It's not like ever since the time you were a child, you've been incessantly propagandized to eat unhealthy, addictive foods. No, it's your own damn fault that you're fat. And if you have diabetes and you die of coronavirus, well, there's only one person here to blame, and it's not Ben Shapiro.
But the other is quality of life, which makes a difference to people who are alive, which is going to be the vast majority of people who even get COVID-19. The vast majority of people who get COVID-19 are going to live. What is quality of life like for the 329 million people who are not going to die of COVID-19, right? Out of 330 million people.
We need this economy reopened for everyone's quality of life. You know, the high quality life that a typical American worker has, wage cucking at some shift work job where they can never get enough sleep, where they're living paycheck to paycheck, where they're likely to get evicted whenever the economy reopens because they haven't been able to pay their rent. Quality of life for someone like Ben Shapiro means that he gets to eat out at fancy restaurants, go on luxurious vacations, get catered to by the servant class. Meanwhile, for millions of working class Americans who are in debt, the ability to stay at home and spend some time with their families, to be in a situation where they don't have a boss overlooking every single thing that they're doing, barking orders at them to work harder, or complaining about what they're doing, is perhaps the highest quality of life they've experienced in a long time. But you know, we need the economy to reopen ASAP so we can start evicting these people from their apartments because they didn't pay rent.
Quality of life for those people matters. And I'm not talking about marginal changes in quality of life. We're talking about people losing their life savings.
We gotta reopen the economy, people. We're gonna lose our life savings. You know, the over 50% of Americans who have a negative net worth. The people who literally have no savings, just liabilities. What's there left to lose, Ben Shapiro? These people are working like slaves to pay debts. If they don't go back to work, if they don't resume working, they're not gonna lose shit. It's people like you, the managerial class, that stands to lose from this.
But you are going to end up in six figures of death. For the year, there's just no question. You'll end up in six figures for death for coronavirus over the course of the year. I'd be willing to bet a significant sum of money, considering that we already have almost 50,000 deaths in the United States in the past 5 weeks. I think that you're looking at more than that. Now, I think that you'd probably be looking about 500,000 dead over the course of the year.
So Ben Shapiro, working in his house, where he'll continue to work regardless of whether the economy reopens or not, has decided that the number of American deaths that are acceptable to have the economy reopened is 500,000. Is this the same sort of thought process that Joseph Stalin went through when he was deciding to implement collective farming in the Soviet Union? Okay, so 1 million people will probably die if we do this, but we need to do it anyway because of communism. For all the people that I've seen Ben Shapiro criticize, both on the left and on the right, I've never seen any of them say something as cold and heartless as we need to let 500,000 people die so that the economy can keep running. Only someone who really loves neoliberalism and absolutely despises other human beings would say something like that.
And you don't need the model that says, what if we just lock down for the rest of time? Because neither of those two things is going to happen. What you need is, what do the models say about a variety of public policies in the middle? And those are the models that are not really being presented to the public.
Did you ever stop for a second, Ben Shapiro, and think about why those models aren't being presented to the public? Our country is run by a bunch of neoliberal shills. It's been that way for decades. They've put the economy above all else, while people like Ben Shapiro served as their cheerleaders. Our ruling elite insatiably lust over the economy. They love it much more than they love the American people. That has been demonstrated time and time again. So the fact that these same people were willing to shut down the economy to protect the lives of Americans shows you just how dire of a situation that we're in right now. The fact that there are no models that indicate how many people would die if America pursued a Ben Shapiro endorsed reopening of the economy tells you that we either don't know what would happen or that it's so terrible they don't want Americans to know. Either way, it's absolutely no reason to be mindlessly optimistic and reopen the economy with just the hope that things won't go horribly wrong.
Honestly, I think there's a good case to be made that they should shut down the subway system, and they should have shut down the subway system months ago.
If New York City shuts down its subway system and the economy reopens, how are people supposed to go to work? Is Ben Shapiro so out of touch with working people that he fails to understand that most of the people working on the island of Manhattan commute in from the outer boroughs or the state of New Jersey? Does he expect all of these people to spend 3 hours walking to work each day? And if the subways are closed and the economy reopens, all of these people spending hours commuting are going to crowd the sidewalks. It's not like they can drive to work either. There's very limited parking spaces in Manhattan. New York City's entire economy takes it for granted that workers are able to reach their destinations through public transportation.
Yes, that's true. Death is not equal to any of the other things. Death is worse than all of the other things for the individual. But for the society, we make these calculations all the time because that's called policy making.
I thought Ben Shapiro was all about individual rights. You know, the Declaration of Independence talks about the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, apparently Ben Shapiro doesn't actually believe in any of those things. You don't have the right to life. You don't have the right to personal liberty. You don't have the right to pursue your own happiness. Instead, due to policy making, Ben Shapiro and other people in the managerial class have decided that you need to work during a viral pandemic, so that multinational corporations can deliver their derivatives to the shareholders. Remember Ben Shapiro's advice, everyone. Don't worry about the individual workers' concern that they might die. Worry about the concern that the larger society has for its economy. That's what's really important here, people. It's called policy making.
And okay, so I ruined the economy. Also, I just have a question for Andrew Cuomo. Why does he get to decide what an essential job looks like?
Does Ben Shapiro think that literally Andrew Cuomo just has a list of all the jobs and he's checking off which ones are essential and which ones aren't? No. The state of New York offered guidance on what it considered to be essential workers. The employers themselves then decided whether or not they fit that criteria. If the job fell into a gray area, then discretion is left with the employer to either decide for themselves or to request additional clarification from New York State's government. Of course, some jobs clearly aren't essential. Tattoo shops aren't essential. Movie theaters are not essential. There's nothing controversial about this.
It's just another version of learn to code, right?
So let me get this straight. Ben Shapiro is now shilling for social justice warrior journalists who were offended when right-wing Twitter trolls told them that they needed to learn to code in light of the fact that so many media companies were laying off journalists. So now Mr. Right Wing, Mr. Conservative Inc., Ben Shapiro is going the white knight for social justice warriors? Fuck off, man.
You know, honestly, like what is Andrew Cuomo's history of being an essential worker?
He's the governor of New York. That's a pretty essential job right now, genius. What do you mean, what's his history? He was the attorney general for the state of New York. He was the director of housing and urban development. So you would rather see Andrew Cuomo and other government officials just go at home and let anarchy reign?
Well, like, why is it that my job is considered an essential job, right? Doing a podcast, why and running a website. Why is my job considered an essential job?
I haven't heard something so narcissistic since I heard that Michael Jackson moonwalked on top of his car during his own child molestation trial. After implying that the governor of New York is not an essential worker, Ben Shapiro tells us that he, as a podcaster, is an essential worker, and then arrogantly ponders why that is. Guess what, Ben Shapiro? You're not an essential worker. The only reason you keep getting to do your job is because you can work from home. That's the same reason you're aggressively pushing for the economy to reopen. It's the same reason you're encouraging all of these right-wing people to put their lives on the line by going out and protesting against their state governments. You only stand to gain financially from the economy reopening, while at the same time, you face absolutely none of the risks that American workers will have to face going back to work.
The attempt to portray those people as Nazi flag-waving morons and white supremacists, Huffington Post compared them to the Charlottesville protesters. It's disgusting. But you are going to end up in 6 figures of debt. I'd be willing to bet a significant sum of money. I think that you'd probably be looking at $500,000 debt over the course of the year. That after coronavirus is over and we end the lockdowns, people should protest and not go back to work, which is like the most cruel and stupid thing I've ever heard. Of course people should go back to work.
If the way the American economy treats you is as a debt slave or as a wage cuck, then I wouldn't be real eager to go back to work for multinational corporations. You know, the same multinational corporations that caused this pandemic to begin with by pursuing globalist agendas. Yeah, I wouldn't be real eager to go back to work during a viral pandemic so that I can pay their rents, so that I can pay their debts back, so I can make them millions of dollars working paycheck to paycheck, paying taxes that then the federal government takes and redistributes to the same people who are profiting off my exploitation. Let me make this clear. There is nothing absurd about American workers refusing to go back to work during this crisis. What is absurd is the idea that we should go back to work. Only an insane person would go back to work for this system, which basically operates as communism in reverse. American workers should not continue to prop up this corrupt system by providing their labor to these people. Just like we would not accept excuses offered by communists for the policies of the Soviet Union, we should reject Ben Shapiro trying to put his own personal neoliberal ideology and belief in globalism over the lives of the American people. Sorry, Ben, but your economic ideology is not worth the government being implicit in atrocities. It's not worth the deaths of millions of people. For someone who is famous for uttering the phrase, "Facts don't care about your feelings," it's awfully telling that you put the economy up on some sort of pedestal. Then when a situation arises that necessitates putting some restrictions on the economy, you ignore all of the facts and immediately engage in motivated reasoning. Facts don't care about your feelings, Ben. We can't let millions of people die because of economy. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this weekend update. I'll hopefully have another new video up for you tomorrow. If you like this video and you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe.